Live theory. Got it. Welcome back to HSE AMA. I'm Julia Nipchinsky, the founder of HSE, joined by our head of community, Rebecca Tisitano. And we couldn't be more excited to feature Tim Dodd, former Oracle executive, famously HSE coach, recently, famously. And yeah, Tim has this incredible skill, social selling, that is not cheesy. Tim.
I appreciate you ladies. I'd love to see how many questions we can get through. And I know everyone queued it up to ask tough questions. So I'm excited to share what little I know about enterprise social selling.
Let's do it, Rebecca.
Yeah, the way that I've been talking to people about this event is if you're trying to sell on LinkedIn, you probably want to hear from Tim because he can give you those leads to those big companies that you've been looking for. And everybody adds something different on hard skill exchange. But Tim, we're just going to be volleying questions at you because we have so many questions from our community today. So we'll get through as many as we can. Julia, could you start us off with that?
Sure. So the first question is, what defines enterprise-grade social selling?
So I think a lot of people on LinkedIn work at really large companies where there's multiple decision makers, influencers, and the sales cycle tends to be a little more longer, a little more complex. So for me, an enterprise sale is where you're going to have multiple buyers, in that journey. It's going to be a multi-step process. And how do you nurture and grow and align all of those relationships to sell let's call it a 6 or 7 figure or more deal?
What's more effective in the early stage, inbound or outbound?
I think it's going to be depends on where you are in your LinkedIn journey. So say you don't have a lot of followers and you're a sales rep and you had these really large companies. I think the impact that you can make is to connect with them, not immediately pitch them, but add value to them as a person and comment and engage on people's content. So I get hit a lot, and I know our friend Justin and Michael, who many on this know, we'll get hit with people from like Pakistan and India and all these different places that have one follower. And so you got to figure out, like, is that a real person? And you may be that one follower person. And so connect with people, comment, engage, show people that you're a real person, earn the right to build a relationship with these people. And it could be that you started with a support person. It could be the C-level suite, but in LinkedIn you can do 360. You can sell from the bottom up, the top down, and you can go sideways and coordinate all 360 degrees.
Tim, question for me. We kind of discussed this. I'm always curious to learn more about Oracle and sales, and even more curious your transition and evolution, because I know that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Oracle is pretty much run by challenger selling,
Correct.
medic, and curious your transition and kind of a integration of social selling. How did it happen? How do you combine it with the Oracle school of selling? And yeah.
Yeah, so I think when you work for a big company like Oracle, I was an overlay rep. So I had to be able to get in front of a customer without having to go through the main rep of the account. So I used social selling as a way to build credibility, and some people have different opinions, but use automation. If your accounts, if they're like, these are your top 100 accounts, these are your decision makers, come up with 1,000 people, reach out to them with automation, connect with them, don't pitch them, add value in your post, add value commenting on their post if they're engaging. And there's a lot of content that you get at an Oracle that doesn't look like something you would ever post on LinkedIn. So rebrand that content to be something that's digestible in a social selling format. Then you've earned the right. So now I can go and say, well, Mr. Overlay Rep, Mr. Key Account Director, I've got a meeting with Julia, head of sales operations at big company. Like, you've got to get me that meeting, or you've got to come to my meeting. And so now I'm able to go wide and deep in those accounts and flank the primary sales reps on those accounts.
a follow-up question to that and transitioning to you, Rebecca. There's this famous case when Larry Ellison fired a famous GTM executive in B2B. I think you know who I'm referring to, but won't name names. Basically, the case is that she posted or tagged Larry on Twitter and was fired. So I'm just curious, how did you transition to being out there, knowing that Oracle is pretty protective of the brand and generally the way they position themselves on LinkedIn, on socials, and maybe it changed?
I do not think it has changed. I think from a Larry specific perspective, you've got to manage up. And so if you're an enterprise seller at an enterprise level company, you've got to manage and go up the food train. So as an example, I'm selling to another company, and people that are ex-Oracle are like, you shouldn't go to the, to the decision maker. And I was like, well, why not? Like, I know the decision maker. That person was on a lot of my calls. Ran into him at an event, no idea who I am, right? Because that person probably got on millions of calls at Oracle. And so you've got to go to your sponsor within the chain of command and upsell them. What is the value? And I didn't have a call with Larry, but I was pretty close to getting a call with Larry. And it had to be a certain dollar amount. It had to be a certain level of qualification for medic. And there's a lot of coordinating, because if my senior leadership goes to Larry for a meeting, well, all of his peers or her peers are going to Larry for a meeting. So you've got to outflank everybody else to get that meeting. Like, it's got to be the most important thing for Larry. The other thing is they don't pay for Sales Navigator. So if you're a $60,000 a year rep, what is the ROI of you paying for Sales Navigator yourself? And so a lot of Oracle reps would just not pay for it because they can expense everything but Sales Navigator. So I would say, as a rep, expense everything you can at your company and just eat your own cost of Sales Navigator. Because when you sell as a 21-year-old SDR and you build out your network on LinkedIn, that is going to be multiples of value across multiple companies, multiple decades of your sales career. It is worth it.
What's your first step in taking Oracle branded messaging and then making it palatable for LinkedIn?
So I use Challenger Sale, as she mentioned. So what I did is I just took the simple brand on the PowerPoint and walked through the steps, right? So you go through the Challenger and you have the deck. Then you think of, okay, Challenger wants you to think about the problem differently. So how can you post problems or how can you post things that help your customer think about the problem differently? So in my world, they didn't have Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Everyone loved AWS. They didn't know Oracle had a cloud. So how do you post content to create awareness that Oracle does in fact have a cloud solution and it does things differently, and educate the audience? Classic Challenger Sale, very easy to translate, into there. And then you'll start getting inbound leads. The other thing that I learned recently that I've known is valuable is to create a custom newsletter for that organization. So if you're selling into the federal government, go and create a newsletter that's tailored to the federal government, or tailored to, PNC Bank's my bank. So if I'm selling to PNC, tailor the messaging to them and get them on your newsletter. And there's a lot of value. So when you pick up the phone and cold call them, they're already going to know who you are because they're getting your newsletter, they're seeing your content on LinkedIn, and micro target based on the decision level or the individual company.
What's the secret to getting CEOs to talk to you?
Have a reason for them, right? Build credibility in your content, your posts, your interaction with them. Don't be afraid that you're a 21-year-old kid, or this is your first sales job, or this is the first time you've sold to a C-level. Go in, be really crisp and personalized on how you can add value to them.
We have one recurring question every single AMA from Jack. And the question is, how often do you cold call?
Not as much as I want, but I try to cold call 1 to 2 hours a day.
Cool. Is there some behavior in a prospect that hints that they'll ghost you?
I don't think they'll ghost you. I think it's, are you relevant at the time for them? And some people legitimately just miss your messages, right? Like I have a deal right now where I'd send a response to a simple clarification of the proposal, and they just didn't see it in their inbox. Especially when you're selling the enterprise, imagine a C-suite, how many internal inbox mailing lists they're subscribed to, right? So this is where I think LinkedIn and social selling becomes powerful, because generally, like, they are going to be in their own inbox. Their admins aren't in the inbox. All of the mailing lists that they're subscribed to aren't on their LinkedIn. So use that to your advantage to get in front of them.
Are you finding that C-levels are even on LinkedIn?
Yeah, they're all on LinkedIn. They're all using it for recruiting. They're all using it for education, and they're all available. It's just a matter, is your topic relevant to them, and is it timely? They might think that you have a really interesting thing, but they've got 12 other things on their plate that they've got to solve for. So this is where posting meaningful content and follow-ups and not being overly salesy, but adding value to them is important.
How do you present data to the board, and how do you cope when numbers are down? How do you set expectations when numbers are up, but you know that the next few months are going to be a tough ride?
So in the enterprise, you're really looking at your end of your fiscal year. So what I do is I focus on, do I have 20 weeks of talk time in a week? And if I do, and I'm really focused on who my ideal customer profile is, then that translates into the number of meetings and the number of, qualified opportunities that are in my funnel. So I always start with the amount of time that I'm on the phone, and that could be cold calling because I have nothing else to do and I need to build up my pipeline, or it's having the discovery calls, the follow-up calls, the touch base, are you happy with us calls. All those things will give you consistency in your numbers, and then it's just a matter of timing. And if you're an Oracle, it's going to be the end of the fiscal year, calendar year, just knowing the individual customer and when their buyer journey happens. The shorter answer is, what is real-time immediate value? So one thing that I've learned in the last couple of months is not talking about, how much revenue I can get you, right? The economy is different now. They want to know, how do I add immediate ROI immediately? So what can I do for you in a month, 3 months, 6 months? It's now, what can I do for you in a 2-week, 4-week, 6-week cycle? And what is the minimal viable business outcome? So you have a discovery session, that next meeting with them, you need to show them what that minimal viable business outcome is. And it may not just be cost savings. Like one of my clients, it was wait time. They want to reduce their wait time. They didn't care how much it costs. They just want that wait time down. So really digging in what that means, and then being able to execute and deliver that at the next meeting once you know what that discovery process happened, and deliver that result in the next meeting.
Curious, how did your life change after Oracle, Tim? And what were the biggest lessons in terms of selling?
I think before Oracle, I didn't realize like how complex sales can be. I always worked at a smaller company. Even if I sold to big companies, I just didn't really understand like how complex a sale is. But when you're at Oracle, you're selling internally to your team's leadership. You're trying to convince leadership to do things for you, because like, I'll give you as an example. If Justin's like Julia knows this person for 15 years, he's got to go to you in a really easy way and say, Julia, I need you to send out this email. I need you to do this ask. And then he needs to stay on you like until you do it. And in Oracle, you had to do that. You had to really manage up. And then you also have to manage, an individual contributor at the client happy with your product, that they're getting value out of it, the middle to upper management and the executives. And everything is, for me, is 4 questions. What matters to Julia personally, her role, her organization. So that could be sales, it could be the entire company, and our relationship. Know the answers to those 4 questions, and you've got to know it for everyone in that buyer cycle.
There were a lot of periods in Oracle, and I'm sorry to focus on Oracle so much, but there was a disclaimer behind the scenes. I'm really, really curious to learn more about your sales process. So there was a period when Larry that's at least what I'm reading, in the books, was really involved in product and engineering. And then at some point, the company like almost went bankrupt, and then he transitioned to sales. So I'm curious, what was Larry's role in sales?
So I think from Larry's perspective, he bought, at least in my product set, he bought a cloud company that he thought could convince companies to move to Oracle for cloud infrastructure. And Larry's done a really good job of going out and buying up every ERP, as an example. He did not get the value from that. And so what Larry said is, look, I'm going to go steal the best and brightest from AWS and build Oracle Cloud Infrastructure from the ground up. And I'm going to go steal the best product marketing people from Azure. And then I'm going to go find the best cloud, at least in my humble opinion, the best cloud reps that he could find, including myself as the early batch. And I think Larry was like, I see where the world's going. I will spend as much money as possible to make that happen. But his team at the time was Mark Hurd and Safra Katz, who were co-CEOs at the time. Mark was a really good sales leader from HP, other areas. Safra was a great CFO. So that tag team was really driving the sales and the execution. Larry was really focused on the vision, the innovation, and making sure that the product and the technology delivered. And so our crawl, walk, and run was like a monumental effort. So we did what we knew Oracle reps knew how to do. Oracle reps would sell audits and get the legal team in, or they would sell credits. And so my job was, okay, Mr. Customer, you spent all this time and effort to, renegotiate your agreement. You got all these credits. What are the use cases that we can use to consume it? The credits are free at this point, but how do you get value out of it? So that value selling approach was not like at all ingrained in Oracle before I was there. But now when you look at OCI numbers on the quarter after quarter and year after year, there is, huge strides of people saying, you know what, I moved my Oracle workload over to Oracle and I'm getting value. So that capability has gotten built out at Oracle, and it's not just go and audit somebody or give them free credits.
What's the most effective approach to social selling if your product portfolio is across various ICPs? How do you make sure that you talk in the specific language that resonates with all of the ICPs?
So what I try to do is I will pick 3 or 4 things that I know that I can ace and nail. And then if I post content on my newsletter, I may have 3 or 4 different newsletters based on the ICP. I may have content that I post and I will direct message my ICP so they're aware of that content, right? So that I think helps you make sure that the right eyeballs are on the content that you're posting and you're engaging and make it relevant to them.
What's the sequence of touches that unlocks good meetings?
So I think there's a few. So for anyone that's on here that obviously knows Justin Michael, I think his method is pretty solid. So what I like to do is if I have a first degree connection and I want to reach out to them, I will send them a message on LinkedIn. I will send them an email. I will send them a call, and I potentially send them a text. And I generally get 30% meeting rates out of that if the content is relevant and timely. I will have a 30%. So spend time on your ICP, know it's relevant content, know it's timely. Those 3 touch points with like first degrees that know you, you'll get 30% of those will take meetings. For the people that don't know you, like make sure you're pushing content and they're seeing the content in front of them, and then pick up the phone and call them and then reference, hey, I noticed you're subscribed to my newsletter. Are you getting value out of it? Right? Like I'm not selling them anything. I just know that they're on my newsletter. Are they getting value? And then uncover the challenges they're having, help them think differently. So classic challenger play, and then go. And then once you've earned the right, then they're going to say, I need a proposal. This is great. So my next meeting is what's my minimal viable business outcome? Show them like, hey, I built this thing for you. Now, if you want it, you're going to have to pay for it. And it's different than just doing these generic, POCs or these generic long-winded emails. I think of everything as like my message on a mobile phone from LinkedIn or email, or if I leave a voicemail and it's going to be a mobile text, like, is that consumable for them? So my only modification of the Justin's method is keep it less than 25 words or less. If you can do that, use images, use other things, then I think that touch point sequence works. If it's a C-level, you do that once a month, so one triple a month. But if it's a lower level person, you could hit them up within 3 or 4 weeks of triples. So maybe 12 touch points in a month, then just move on to a new batch of people. You don't want to keep sending them emails and voicemails and all this stuff all the time. But if it's C-level, 3 touch points, move to the next month. Every month, touch them.
What value addition you can do at every follow-up touches?
I'm sorry, what was that?
What value addition you can
Oh.
do at every follow-up touches?
So I think from a value perspective, if you really know the prospect and it's not just part of an automated sequence, like a good friend of mine today, some guy with the same name as him sent me a note about, being a health coach. And so I sent him a text. I was like, hey, is this your alter ego telling me something about my health? It's just a funny touch point. There's no value except that we're exchanging text and humor, but now I can follow up with them and say, hey, are you doing well with what you're doing? Is there a way that I can help you? But that pattern interrupt is great. I use it all the time with, it's every day is a holiday, right? So figure out what holiday it is today and open up the message with like, happy toy day or whatever holiday it is. And if you know that there's people that are passionate and they have interest in certain things, send them a note on those holidays. You're building the personal relationship. That's the value that you're doing, but it's a pattern interrupt for you then to check in on them. So, so outside of that, these Venn diagrams that are great, show them graphically. These are 3 or 4 things that you do or that the customer needs. And in the middle is the customer's head or their company logo or my logo if I'm the one providing the value. Put it in a visual way for them to see, this is how I connect all the dots, and my company or them personally or their company's in the middle of that Venn diagram.
How can I build my followers really fast?
Personal stories, broad content around artificial intelligence, things that are buzzworthy. But if that's the goal, that's great. Your goal should be, how do I build deep, pipeline of ideal customer profiles? So I would say focus on those to broaden your reach and get your reach out until you get to 500 people. But after that, really focus on who your ICP is, the decision makers, the influencers of those ICPs, and focus more on the quality of your network than the quantity of your network. Once you find a model that works, obviously you can use automation, go viral, and scale once you've really nailed down what is resonating with your ICP.
Tim, just one more question to dive into this, Rebecca. I'm so sorry. So yeah, like there were a lot of people, 2 radical extremes. One extreme that I'm seeing on LinkedIn is kind of a, you turn your LinkedIn into an Instagram experience, Facebook experience, and you start posting daily at the same hour, everything. And, like, I don't know, pictures of your dog, your food, sports activities, you name it. And the other extreme that people would post like once chaotically in a while to amplify the content of their company or just sometimes when they're inspired. So I'm curious, how do you, like, you have a huge audience on LinkedIn. What's your story? How do you go about it? Do you plan your posts? What approach works the best for you? Because I mean, I've experimented personally a lot, and there was a time when I posted daily, and I take content seriously, so it's kind of pretty time consuming. It takes like 30 minutes to an hour just to post and do a great post. And then what I found that you have to kind of amplify it yourself because LinkedIn doesn't work anymore. Correct me if I'm wrong. What's your experience? And that's the general trend that I'm seeing in the industry.
Yeah, so I think, when you're early on in your LinkedIn career, you want to get some virality out of it. But when you're really busy and focused on growing your business and living your life, unless you're going to pay someone, to create content every day, or you get really good with like the AI content generation tools, I don't think there's an easy way to do that unless you're like, I'm really passionate about copywriting and I like writing. So for me, the way I do it is I use, this podcast, right? Maybe I get an audio version of this, then I dump it into a tool called WordTune and use that to get my own perspective of things that are in my own voice and turn that into content. And I was doing that for a while this year, and that worked really well. The other thing that I've done that worked really well is I built list of like a top 100 list, and like that went viral. So then I said, great, like top 100 list, let's build out a micro targeted audience for that. So like last week, it was the end of Women in Sales Month. I did a top 100 of women in sales. Some of them had like less than 500 followers. Then I had a top 10 of followers you must follow. And that really went viral, and it gets a lot of people looking at your brand, but is it really my ICP, or is it really just giving back to the community and building out your tribe? And then the other advantage of that is you start getting really good feedback into your workflow of like the top people that you really want to pay attention to because you've spent time building this list. They're all of a sudden all over your feed, right? So the algorithm still works in the sense that you celebrate someone or you tag them, like, like Jasmine Alec, like did something cool. If he recognizes you and engages in your post, he'll drive traffic to you. But you don't want to use the influencers of a copywriter if you're a tech sales guy, because his following isn't my ICP. So it's cool maybe once or twice a month to get a lot of engagement on those types of posts. But what I use is like what I did. So before this, every Monday I do my newsletter, right? So like I use Google Alerts. I pick all my topics. Sunday morning, I review all my topics. I like build my draft newsletter, go get more coffee, come back, see what I really like. So I'll come up with maybe like a top 5 list for each category, and I'll remove the lowest level one. And then I come back and I edit it and make sure I don't have any typos. Then I schedule it to post. Then I also build that out for my individual companies' strategic partners. So then as an example, I talk about, Justin. I would have a newsletter just for Justin. Then I would take out anything about Justin and have a separate newsletter for Julia, right? So then they get custom content that's relevant to them, and it's personalized. And then you do it at that company level. So you might have like a couple hundred people at a company if you're selling in there. Now you have the content on Monday. Now I can engage people. Like I can send out 100 automated messages a day to people that content would be relevant, asking them to sign up for my newsletter. Then on Thursday, I have my audio event. So I will promote that usually the day before. And this is where scheduling becomes hectic. If I know ahead of time that I have a real legit person booked, Friday of that week before, I'll be out promoting it. That's usually not what happens. So usually Tuesday, I figure out who my speaker is going to be. On Wednesday, I promote the speaker. So my consistent posts are newsletter on Monday, my event on Thursday. Then I go with like the crazy, like, hey, this is a cool topic. Or if it's a longer post, I'll post that on Sunday, knowing who's going to be sitting there, reading LinkedIn on a Sunday. So now I try to be cognizant of my audience on a weekend and what they're going to consume versus during the week when people are doing it. So I try to be a little cognizant of that. Then you just monitor it and see, are you getting what I call sales qualified leads from the engagement? I don't care as much about impressions or engagement as I do the meeting. So if I go on a meeting with Julia today and she's like, hey, Tim, I loved your newsletter this week, I know it's getting in front of Julia. And if that happens consistently in my meetings with my prospects and my customers, then I know my content's going to where I care about, not some metric on LinkedIn.
2 questions. One, How do you stay organized with social selling? Because a lot of people get frazzled.
So I use Sales Navigator and I export all my contacts. So that becomes your list. Some people use Make. I use Zapier. So you can use that to track all of that data. And then I have a template that shows like, here's the industries or the level of decision maker, and here's the people that are engaging. So I'm basically building that out. There are, paid tools that I've used in the past, but generally for an enterprise seller, you have a handful of customers and you've got a lot of ICPs and decision makers in there. So you're not running a lot of sales opportunities. So I generally think Google Sheets is fine for that type of stuff.
And last question from me, of all the people watching today that might choose to book a session with you on Hard Skill Exchanged, which type of person are you most excited to work with?
So I think people that are new are awesome because they don't have all the bad experiences that I, as a sales rep, have had to undo in my bad habit category. So I have a couple people that I've coached that are like, hey, I just graduated college. It's my first sales job. I just committed to LinkedIn, even if I'm a seasoned seller. Those I think are awesome just to watch them. And you can have a huge impact on someone from 0 to 100 at that level. The other one are people that are struggling where they're all over the place. So I would relate to that personally. And then how do you fence yourself in? Or, hey, I just got a new account list. I took a new job. How do I really focus my efforts based on that new role or that, that new company that I'm working for?
Great. And this is your opportunity to sell yourself. Of all of our HSE coaches, why should people choose to work with you?
I think I have a unique perspective as a software developer where when you read like Tech Powered Sales from Justin, like a lot of people don't know how to use technology effectively. And so from that tech background, as well as the fact that I've never really had a support system outside of Oracle to support me, I've always been a one-man, hey, you have no accounts, go sell stuff, figure it out. So if you're in that situation where you're like, I work at a small company, I got to sell to enterprise, I don't have a marketing person, that's where I think you're going to get the most bang for your buck on the social selling. And especially if you're selling into the enterprise, there's a lot of people that know how to go in front of a single decision maker on LinkedIn, but how do you manage across the 20, a 20 person committee of selling and getting in front of them? And that can add a huge impact to your financial situation if you can close it. And I think social selling is the way to go as a tenet that people could use better. If you agree with that viewpoint, then we all should have a chat one-on-one and see how I can help. And I know there's probably a million other questions about Oracle that Julie is going to send me offline. And if your questions weren't answered, connect with me on LinkedIn, join our Hyper Cycle WeChat group, get me wherever. I'm happy to answer the questions if they weren't answered today or elaborate on the questions that I did answer.
Hypercycle. It's my favorite.
Hypercycle, sorry.
Thank you so much, Tim. It was awesome. Yeah, everyone, coach with Tim. We've got 17 sponsors, 17 coaches on the platform out of 900. So yeah, it means a lot. Appreciate you. And yeah, we got to do another AMA about Oracle solely.
We'll just do an Oracle AMA, then we can just get right to the hunt.
Let's just get all of, coaches from Oracle. The ultimate.
It'd be AMO, Ask Me Oracle.
Ask Me Oracle. See you.
See you.
Thank you so much.